Picture a katana so sharp it could slice through a tank. And your skepticism with a single swipe. Epic, right? Blame Hollywood and anime, where katanas moonlight as rustic lightsabers. Bad guy in the way? Chop. High-rise office building? Slice. Legends even whisper samurai blades could outdo Wolverine's manicure set. But let's sheath the tall tales. Katanas are metallurgical marvels, yes, folded, hammered, and probably caffeinated into perfection. But steel is still steel, and physics is still physics. Mid-air scarf cutting? Stylish as heck. Halving an anvil? Congrats, you've created two very unhappy broken things. Samurai wielded their swords with respect. These weren't multi-terrain chopping machines. They left lumberjacking and tank dismantling to axes and actual tanks. Mythbusters and forged-in-fire enthusiasts have tested. Against tatami mats and torsos, the katana gleams. Against Buicks? Welcome to the Metal Salad Special. If katanas cut everything, sushi chefs would be out of a job. Every meal instantly sashimi. The real magic lies in centuries of craftsmanship and knowing when not to open soup cans with your heirloom blade. Beyond their reputed sword skills, samurai were also thought to embody an unbreakable adherence to the Bushido code. Was every samurai truly a Bushido-powered superhero, or is history a bit more nuanced than a manga showdown? The romantic image paints samurai glowing with honor, clutching swords and morals with equal gravity, never bending for fear of dishonor. But let's crack that lacquer with a little reality check. Bushido, often sold as the ultimate code, was less unbreakable law and more guidelines we proudly nodded at. Different clans, different eras, wildly different takes. Some samurai treated Bushido like we treat app terms and conditions, skimmed once, then promptly ignored. In truth, many warriors thrived on political intrigue, bribes, and assassination. Honor was conveniently whatever kept their heads on their shoulders. Ironically, Bushido didn't become a formal, organized concept until the swords were already gathering dust. Edo scholars were the original PR team, polishing samurai branding. Later, the Meiji government rebooted Bushido as national motivational fuel. So yes, samurai sometimes lived by the code, but if they always did, then I'm strictly on salads. Reality, balancing Bushido with survival. That was their real art form. However, when samurai lost their lords, they transformed into ronin, often seen as solitary and tragic figures. Picture the ronin, sword in hand, dignity in shambles, roaming the countryside in search of meaning, or maybe just a decent bowl of noodles. Thanks to films and moody artworks, we picture these masterless samurai as jobless gloom magnets, doomed to wander rainy roads, forever pining for lost honor. But in reality, a ronin was simply a samurai without a lord. Maybe because their boss got the boot, lost his land, or couldn't navigate the choppy waters of shogun politics. Sure, plenty of ronin hit rock bottom or joined shady gangs, but not all lived on rainwater and regret. Some basically invented the side hustle. You'd find roaming swordsmen turned martial arts instructors, savvy merchants, or even private security, the feudal Japanese Uber drivers, sword in hand instead of steering wheel. Often, being a ronin was just a temp gig until a new lord came calling. So while stories crank the tragedy to 11, the real ronin spectrum stretched from desperate to downright comfortable. Over centuries, ronin gained a reputation part taboo, part cool. Forever the original gig workers, feared by bosses, envied by freelancers. Despite their tragic image, samurai armor was not just for show, it was a critical part of their battlefield identity. Picture a samurai chasing a ninja while clanking like a medieval wind chime. Sounds more like a comedy sketch than a stealth mission, right? Popular belief treats samurai armor as little more than ceremonial bling, the kind you'd don if your evening plans involved kabuki theater instead of all-out battlefield brawls. If that were true, half of feudal Japan would have been wandering around in pajamas. But here's the kicker. The yoroi and domaru weren't just fancy costumes, they were engineering masterpieces. Forget stiff tin can suits. Samurai suited up in lacquered plates tied with silk cords and leather, making their gear more like yoga pants than medieval armor, relatively speaking. The armor was modular, meaning warriors could shed the bulky bits for some sword-sharpening downtime or pile it on when trouble came knocking. Samurai didn't just strike dramatic poses, they rode horses, sprinted like marathoners, and hit bullseyes in archery contests, all while fully armored. And those shoulder guards? They could block a spear, and probably your nosy neighbor's gossip too. By the Sengoku period, lightweight designs ruled the day, letting warriors zip through lightning-fast skirmishes. Iron Man, step aside. These guys were rocking functional battle fashion centuries before it was cool. So next time you picture a samurai, think tactical genius, not awkward armor fails. Complementing the armor, samurai helmets were iconic and elaborate, serving purposes beyond mere flashiness. Imagine charging into battle wearing a helmet big enough to pick up satellite signals. Hollywood adores parading samurai with towering, ornate kabuto, complete with giant horns, flaring crests, and enough metal to build a compact car. The popular image paints every samurai as medieval peacocks strutting the battlefield. But, plot twist, the truly spectacular helmets were mostly reserved for shoguns, daimyo, and anyone angling to be spotted from orbit. Most samurai? They stuck to plain, practical headgear, or skipped helmets altogether. Flashy antlers and dragon wings weren't daily fare. Those were costume pieces for ceremonies or psychological warfare. After all, nothing screams "shoot here" quite like a 2-foot metal mohawk. Plus, elaborate kabuto came with a hefty price tag, so only the rich and attention-hungry went all out. Really, the samurai's biggest combat challenge wasn't the enemy. It was not toppling over while bowing in that oversized helmet. Today's Hollywood kabuto is more costume party than battlefield ready, like storming a Nerf ward dressed as a disco ball. While samurai are often portrayed in elaborate gear, their combat was commonly depicted as one-on-one duels. Samurai movies love to show dramatic solo showdowns, but was feudal Japan really one endless queue of honorable duels? If that were true, battles would have dragged on longer than your family reunion. Everyone politely waiting their turn to swing a sword, maybe munching on rice balls between rounds. Not quite. The myth of samurai always dueling one-on-one comes courtesy of pop culture. And hey, it's way easier to choreograph 4 guys fighting than 400. Historically, samurai warfare was the exact opposite of a fencing match. Imagine mud, arrows, ashes, chaos, and someone hollering, "Who just threw mud in my eye?" Honor mattered, sure, but you can't keep your dignity intact when you're ambushed tying your shoe. Most samurai packed more than just swords, bows, spears, and occasionally a very large friend. Those iconic solo duels, like Musashi's legendary bouts, were rare exceptions. The brooding lone duelist? Mostly an Edo period invention. Then anime took it to the next level. Real samurai strategy? Never bring a katana to an archery fight. Or, to a stampede. In these tales of dueling warriors, women are rarely acknowledged as part of the samurai tradition. Samurai movies love dudes with top knots. But what about the women with swords? Did they just skip hair day for 5 centuries? Or are they masters of historical hide-and-seek? Let's hack through the myth. The tale goes that women never made the samurai cut. Cute story, if you overlook actual history. Sure, Japanese society ran like an old boys' club, but it wasn't clueless. Enter the Anabugeisha, samurai-class women armed with naginata and enough swagger to make their armor gleam. Legendary figures like Tomo Gozen didn't just ride into battle, they galloped straight into the annals of awesome. Forget glass ceilings. If there was a samurai ceiling, these ladies sliced right through it, sometimes literally. They defended castles, led troops, and penned poetry that made enemies weep, probably from the killer metaphors. Today, pop culture sometimes remembers them, but history all too often tucks them behind the dudes in armor. Who needs knighthood when you've got a naginata, or hairpins that double as deadly weapons? Additionally, samurai are frequently shown as estranged from common folk, harboring disdain for peasants. Picture a samurai, gleaming armor, fierce scowl, and zero interest in swapping rice-cooking hacks with the neighbor. The old myth says samurai wouldn't be caught dead chatting with peasants, unless it was about sword practice on said peasant. Feudal Japan had more class barriers than a medieval game of chutes and ladders. Samurai perched at the lofty peak of society's mountain, while farmers, artisans, and merchants scrambled in the mud below. But hold up before you picture samurai snobbery as disciplined as their sword skills. Here's the kicker. Bushido, their famed code, was all about honor, loyalty, and, shockingly, not acting like a stuck-up rice lord. In real life, samurai managed lands and depended on peasants for food, taxes, and, well, survival. All those strict social divisions sound intimidating, until your rice stores run dry and those peasants look more like VIPs than peasants. The line between samurai and peasant blurred, especially out in the countryside where they worked side by side. By the late Edo period, class lines were as fuzzy as a sumo wrestler's love life. Proof even samurai could appreciate a good neighbor. This social aloofness contrasts with the belief that all samurai were exemplary swordsmen. Picture every samurai slicing through bamboo with a single, flawless sword strike, Hollywood's go-to party trick. Thanks to movies and anime, samurai are cast as katana-wielding Olympians, dispatching foes and unfortunate plants with poetic flair. But in reality, the average samurai was just as likely to wield a brush as a blade. Pop culture transforms every samurai into a sword god. Yet many were part-time warriors, full-time bureaucrats. Some samurais' deadliest weapon was their signature stamp, not their katana. Higher-ranking samurai often left the actual fighting to specialists, reserving their energy for the mountain of government paperwork on their desks. By the 1800s, mastering elegant kanji calligraphy took more practice than drawing a sword for battle. If every samurai were a swordmaster, HR disputes would have been way messier, and let's be honest, a lot more entertaining. So next time you picture a duel, imagine ink stains as much as bloodstains. Yet beyond martial prowess, samurai are sometimes romanticized as poets and artists at heart. Picture a samurai unsheathing his fearsome katana, only to set it aside, brush in hand, composing a gentle haiku about cherry blossoms swirling in the breeze. The legend has it, samurai as blood-splattered warrior poets, penning verses between sword swings. But before we start picturing battlefield open mic nights, let's get real. Bushido, the samurai's rulebook, did tip its hat to the arts. High-ranking samurai were supposed to master calligraphy, poetry, maybe even the delicate skill of pouring tea without flooding their armor. Yet for most, writing verse was more respectable artsy hobby than life's grand mission. Sure, some samurai haikus really cut deep. Some say so sharp rivals surrendered out of poetic terror. But many were way more focused on arranging enemy troops than perfecting syllable counts. Lower-ranking samurai? Forget it. They were busy tilling fields, and sometimes each other. Only when peace settled over Edo, Japan, did samurai have the luxury to wax poetic instead of just waxing their swords. Real or imagined, the warrior poet lives on, a drifting cherry blossom, probably dodging a flying spear with style. Despite their cultured image, samurai are commonly thought to have been fierce enemies of ninja. Picture a samurai and a ninja glaring at each other across a misty battlefield. Rivals ready to star in their own legendary anime opening. Popular legend insists these two were mortal enemies, locked in an eternal dance of sword swings and shuriken throws. But real history? It's less Saturday morning cartoon, more oddly bureaucratic soap opera. Samurai, the armored nobles sworn to Bushido, dignity, and presumably the world's strictest helmet hair policies. Ninjas, or shinobi for extra cred, were masters of espionage, sabotage, and blender-level stealth, blending into everything, maybe even awkward clan parties. Were they epic foes? Not quite. In reality, ninjas were less sworn enemy and more, hey, mind spying on my neighbor's rice fields? Sometimes samurai even hired ninjas on the side, or slipped into ninja hoods themselves for covert gigs. Turns out samurai didn't spend evenings plotting ninja takedowns. Paperwork probably scared them more. The truth? Their relationship was pure frenemies, a workplace drama with swords and smoke bombs instead of memos and staplers. Furthermore, samurai are often assumed to have used a uniform set of swords and equipment. Much like how every superhero seems to wear the exact same spandex suit, the legend goes that all samurai shopped at one giant katana superstore. According to pop culture, historic Japan must have looked like Samurai Con, rows of warriors decked out in identical armor, wielding the same swords, maybe even collectively grumbling about the tight fit. But as with most myths, reality was far more fascinating and infinitely less coordinated. Regional quirks meant every corner of Japan had its own swordsmithing flair, exotic metals, and time-honored traditions. Samurai were less like uniformed drones and more like fashion-forward warriors, customizing blades and armor to showcase their taste, rank, and clan pride. Early samurai? They gave the katana a pass in favor of trusty bows. Later, Swords took center stage, but with an eye-popping variety of styles. One rule held firm: one size fits nobody. Status-conscious samurai collected flamboyant gear, engraved crests, and, naturally, decorative fittings shaped like their family's lucky carp. If only real samurai had uniforms, anime cosplayers might breathe a sigh of relief. But history, as always, prefers a splash of individuality over cookie-cutter conformity. Alongside their armaments, the dramatic ritual of seppuku is viewed as a frequent aspect of samurai life. Think seppuku was on every samurai's daily to-do list? Spoiler, they weren't sharpening swords over breakfast or penciling in ritual suicide between feed horse and morning tea ceremony. Contrary to legend, seppuku wasn't a casual pastime. If it were, Japan would have run out of noble blades and samurai before you could say top knot. Here's the scoop. Seppuku was a highly ritualized, very rare odd event. Only in cases of immense disgrace or as a final honor-restoring act did it make the agenda, and always with official permission and witnesses. You needed an audience, a second, the kaishakunin, and enough ceremonial pomp to make even stubborn pride blush. This wasn't a party invite anyone was eager to accept. Most samurai, much to Hollywood's disappointment, actually died in battle, from illness, or simply by wrinkling into old age. So next time you imagine samurai mornings, picture quiet contemplation over rice, not existential sword drama. That's the kind of honor Bushido would raise a cup of tea to. Underlying these traditions is the perception that samurai were unwaveringly loyal to their lords. Picture a samurai pledging undying loyalty, then instantly Googling how to switch sides with style and dignity. Legend has it, samurai were the platinum standard of loyalty. Warriors so devoted they stuck to their daimyo like medieval Velcro. No unsticking allowed. But beneath those stoic helmets, loyalty was messier than assembling IKEA armor without instructions. Alliances flipped faster than cherry blossoms in the wind. Clans swapped enemies like Pokemon cards, and survival often outranked devotion on the priority list. In fact, some samurai, cue Tokugawa Ieyasu's sly grin, perfected the art of betrayal, changing sides more often than a kabuki actor switches masks, treating loyalty like a sushi menu, always picking what was freshest that day. Sure, Bushido preached unwavering honor, but hunger, ambition, and the desire not to lose one's head had a much louder voice. So next time you hear about samurai loyalty, remember, if loyalty was a sword, some kept it razor sharp, while others quietly pawned it for a bowl of rice. Welcome to the strategic chaos of Bushido, fine print and all. This loyalty is thought to have ended abruptly when the samurai class vanished with the Meiji Restoration. Imagine a world where thousands of top-knot-wearing warriors vanished overnight after a political memo. Now you see them, now you don't. Sounds efficient, right? If the Meiji government really had that kind of instant disappearing act, Tokyo would have far fewer lost umbrellas today. The legend goes like this. The Meiji Restoration strikes in 1868. The emperor hits send on a blast email, and poof, no more samurai. But not even your most stubborn unread work emails disappear as fast as the myth says the samurai did. In reality, their exit was more of a slow fade than a mic drop moment. Samurai didn't just sheathe their katanas and swap them for spreadsheets overnight. Some signed up for the army or police force, others dabbled in business or government gigs. Even after the big no-sword edict, Haitore, in 1876, almost a decade later, samurai uprisings like the Satsuma Rebellion made it clear vanished warriors still knew how to make noise and paperwork. Their spirit stuck around, in government, culture, and, let's be honest, every action anime ever. The truth? Samurai didn't vanish. They just rebranded with a vengeance. Moreover, samurai are often idealized as calm Zen masters embodying serene wisdom. Picture a dozen samurai serenely meditating beneath cherry blossoms until someone mentions taxes. Suddenly, half draw their swords, a quarter scramble for their abacuses, and the rest just take off running. Popular imagination paints samurai as Zen-like sages, calm, patient, more into perfecting calligraphy than cleaving heads. Thank those poetic scrolls and pristine rock gardens. Those Zen gardens didn't rake themselves, especially when a rival clan showed up wielding rakes of their own. The truth? Most samurai spent less time chasing enlightenment and more tangled up in bureaucratic squabbles, political drama, and, let's be honest, the occasional messy sword fight. Many were infamous hotheads, more likely to duel over a bad poem than meditate on life's impermanence. Zen certainly left its mark on the elite, but for every contemplative warrior, there were 3 more trying to find nirvana while drowning in armored paperwork. So next time you picture serene samurai, remember, a calm exterior didn't stop them from enthusiastically lopping heads over minor insults. Enlightenment is lovely, unless someone mocks your calligraphy.